Hello and welcome to Creative Cakes by Sharon. Today I am doing the main character from the new Lego movie, Emmet, and over the next few weeks I will be doing some of the other characters that feature in the movie as well. So the materials we'll be using is a template for Emmet's head. You can get a copy of this in the description box below. I've got a board which I've covered in some green fondant, an 8-inch cake. I've got my fondant roller, a cake smoother, a sharp knife and my offset spatula. I've got my pizza wheel, a paintbrush and my X-Acto blade. I've also got some flour glue, but I've got a 1-inch and a 1/2-inch round cutter, some yellow fondant, green, red and brown, as well as a little bit of black and white fondant, and I've got some white chocolate ganache here as well. The first thing I need to do is cut the cake out. So using my template, I'm going to cut around the template on the cake, making sure the knife is vertical at all times, and then remove all the excess cake. To create Emmet's Lego style neck, all I'm going to do is insert my sharp knife about 1 centimetre into the cake, all along the bottom of his face, and then from the front of the cake I'm just going to insert the knife gently until I meet my first cut, and you'll see that this little piece of cake lifts straight off. Now I'm going to add my ganache to the cake. This adds flavour as well as having the practical purpose of providing a nice base for our fondant to stick to. So just make sure to cover the entire cake, top and sides, getting into all the crevices, and try and get as smooth a finish as you can, and then pop it in the fridge for about 15 minutes to set. While I'm waiting for my ganache to set, I'm going to make my green covered board look a little bit more like a Lego board. And for those of us who don't have a Lego mold, I'm going to show you a very simple way of creating a Lego look board. So I've rolled out my fondant to about 2 to 3 mils thick, and with my 1-inch cutter I'm going to cut some round circles, and then I'm going to start positioning them onto the board using a little bit of my flour glue to adhere them. I'm going to place them up and across the board, but I'm not going to work my way right to the center because this is where my cake is going to sit and these little circles won't be seen. So I'm just going to position my template there as a guide of where not to stick the dots and cover the rest of the board. Once it's all completed, it looks like quite an impressive little Lego board, and you can see that the cake will sit nicely in the middle. Now I've taken my cake out of the fridge and it has formed a crust on the surface, so I'm just going to dip my offset spatula into some boiling water and wipe off the excess with a paper towel and smooth that over my cake. This is going to make sure I've got a nice even surface on the top and sides. To create Emmet's face, I'm going to roll out some yellow fondant, and I've cut my template in half so that I'm just going to work on the bottom half. So once I've rolled out my fondant to about 2 mils thick, I'm going to place the template on top of the cake, and with my sharp knife just score a line at the top of his face. This is going to act as a guide of where I'm going to place the fondant, and I'm just going to use my pizza cutter to make a nice straight cut. This is the edge that I'm going to line up with the mark that I made on the cake. So I'm just going to gently drape my fondant over the cake, and because I've got a little bit too much excess hanging off here, it's a little bit difficult to work with, so I'm just going to use my pizza cutter to trim it back a little bit, and I'm going to use my smoother as well as my hands to smooth out the fondant over the cake. The smoother comes in handy to create the real definition we need between the face and the neck, and continue working down the sides of the cake to smooth out the fondant. And then using my pizza cutter I do a rough cut around the edge, and then I go back and neaten up with my X-Acto blade. Using my brown fondant now, I'm going to create Emmet's hair. So first thing I need to do is cut the little side pieces of hair out of the template, and once I've rolled my brown fondant out, I'm going to cut around the stencil, making sure that I make them long enough so that they can hang over the sides of the cake as well. Now I'm just going to place it onto either side of the cake and smooth down the edges, and then trim off the excess from both sides of the cake. Now I'm going to create Emmet's hard hat. So I've just got the stencil here, and you can see I've just got a colour copy here which shows a little bit better the definition and the grooves inside the hard hat. So I'm just going to cut out 3 pieces of my red fondant to create these raised pieces of the hard hat. Just roll them into a long snake and just measure it up against my template. I want the top of the snake to be thinner and the bottom to be a bit broader. So I'm just going to place it on the cake and measure it, and just make a little mark with my knife before trimming it off and then repositioning it back onto the cake. So I have to do this with all 3 pieces, and then just gently press it onto the ganache and it will stick. Now, of course, we need to cover the top section to create the hat, so I've just rolled out my red fondant, and I'm going to use my template as a guide of where to cut the bottom. And once I've rolled the fondant onto my roller, I'm going to line up my straight edge with the top of Emmet's face and gently drape the fondant down. Then, using my fingers, I'm going to work in between the grooves that I created on the hard hat, and then I'm going to smooth down the edges and trim off the excess. I've got my board back here, which has had a little time to dry, and I'm just going to transfer my cake onto the board. To complete the hard hat, I need to add a rim to the edge, so I'm going to roll out my red fondant into a long snake, and then with my cake smoother I'm just going to smooth over the top of the snake so that I get a bit of a rectangular shape rather than a long round shape, and then just place it onto the cake using a bit of my flour glue to adhere it with. Now I've got a piece of black fondant which I've just rolled out, but before I cut the eyes and the mouth out, I'm just going to use the stencil from which I've already cut the eyes and the mouth out, and using the back of my paintbrush I'm just going to score some lines so that I can use these as a guide as to where to position the black pieces of fondant. So I'm using my small round cutter now to cut out the eyes, and I'm going to trace around the mouth with my stencil, and then using some of my flour glue I'm going to adhere the eyes and the mouth to the cake and just smooth the edges so that there are no rough corners. Emmet is nearly complete, and all I have to do is create his tongue with a little bit of red fondant and also his teeth using the stencil as a guide. And there you have it, Emmet from the new Lego movie. This is a really easy cake, guys, that you can create to impress your little Lego fan or your friends. I'll be creating quite a few of the characters from the new Lego movie, so if you do have a favourite, please let me know in the comment section below. I will be adding all of these tutorials to a Lego movie character playlist, so make sure you subscribe to my channel by clicking the link below. Please give it a like if you enjoyed my tutorial, and of course thanks for watching.